Welcome back to another episode of Direct Edition, a podcast about nothing and everything. I'm your host, Dave. Today I'm bringing you a very special interview with my buddy, Evan Weiss, aka Into It Over It. That is his stage name, as well as being a lead singer and bassist in Symmetry and a band called There. I sat down with Evan for almost 2 hours, and we spoke about everything from his venture into a record label owner. Touring life is a big part of this discussion as well as just live music in general, influences, and life as a big vinyl record collector, because we both are, but Evan's collection is quite staggering. It was just great to catch up with Evan, ask some questions about his musical career and some of his process, stuff that I never really thought to ask before, or just never came up in natural conversation. Me and Evan go back at least a decade at this point, and somebody that I just always enjoy hanging out with, and I know we always have some fun stuff to share. We also touch on a lot of the stuff that happened during the pandemic, where he released his last Into It Over It album and the heaviness of that, but also an album that really helped me get through the pandemic. So I think you're going to really enjoy this one. It's a focused conversation where, like I said, I got to ask some of the questions I wanted to, and I hope this one leads to more conversations with him. And before we get started, you can also check out all of the links below, and that will bring you to his Patreon as well as his social media. You should definitely check out his music. If you have a similar music taste to me, I think you'll really enjoy his music. But without further ado, let's get going with a conversation with my buddy Evan Weiss. Hi everybody. Today my guest is referred to by certain websites as an emo lifer. He is a very talented musician, a record label owner, and a gearhead. His name is Evan Weiss. You might know him from one of the 7,000 bands he's been in. If I listed them all off, we'd be here for 2 hours. Into It Over It, Symmetry, There, Couplet, The Progress. And he's also told me and told many people, don't ever refer to him as Sir. Evan Weiss.
It felt so cool being backstage. You got all sorts of snacks back here. Some treats.
The virtual green room is great.
Good coffee in the green room, I got to say.
So speaking of hard-hitting questions, I do have to ask you, how does it feel knowing that Linkin Park did not select you to be their new lead singer?
Dude, I couldn't hack it. Honestly, I went for the rehearsal. I tried out and everything, and I don't have the pipes, man. These days, like, it's actually getting harder to sing as I get older. I quit smoking about a year ago, and I've seen a pretty decent increase in my vocal range since then. Mm-hmm. But music isn't my full-time job anymore, so it's like I'm just a little out of practice. Like we just did this trip. Into It Over just did a tour to the United Kingdom, and I came home. My good friend was asking me how the tour went, and I was like, "Man, it went really well." But it's kind of crazy going from being sedentary, like sitting at a desk 8 hours a day, working your job, into going into burning 6,000 calories a day for 2 weeks, right back into being sedentary, sitting at a desk again for 40 hours a week, and in that same breath, he's like, "Do you want to be my gym buddy?" And so I've started going to the gym with this guy.
Oh, nice!
Like trying to improve my health before I turn 40 in a couple weeks. So
yeah, that's the name of the game. I need to get back out there and go hiking daily. It's just owning your own business is rough.
I got nothing for me out here, hikes wise. You got tons of landscape and topography to crawl around on out there.
yeah. And just in Tacoma alone, just like Seattle, I mean, the neighborhood is its own gym because there's hills. You can just walk up and down that stuff all day.
Like a 20-pound weight in a backpack and just go up and down.
My back would not be happy about that one. The USPS broke me. And my back's never going to be the same. Yeah, I sprained my back when I worked for the post office.
No fucking way. What were you doing? Were you just like...
I was getting ready to take the stuff out to the truck. And you know how Amazon is everywhere. And it was one of these, what I like to call baby coffin boxes, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a coffin that you could put a baby in. And, it's about 3 feet tall and about, 18 inches wide, and I went to pick it up, and it was a 45-pound bag of dog food. And I just felt the lower back go. I hit my knees. Like I went down on my knees, and I was like in so much pain. I was like,
Yeah.
I clenched my eyes so hard I was crying.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. And
you get workers' comp for something like that?
yeah. Except the thing is with the post office, they blame the worker. So like, oh, you're not wearing the right shoes, or you weren't bending the right way. Like they do everything to put the
brace on, etc.
Yeah, they do everything to put the injury on you. But I still got workers' comp, and I was out for 2.5 weeks. But my back's it won't ever be the same. I mean, I didn't do anything that needed surgery, but I did. I needed to do some physical therapy for it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, it is what it is. Now I just lift comic boxes all day, so that's what it is. You lift boxes of vinyl and
boxes of records every day. It's the same, very much the same. Like,
yeah.
Dead weight is dead weight, no matter what's in there.
I just moved about a week and a half ago, just 8 blocks to a new house, but this was kind of like the last time that I'm like, man, I don't know if I could do this with my record collection again.
Dude, hire movers, man. It is the greatest fucking thing. We were very fortunate. I was able to get a house a couple years ago with my fiance. And that was the best money I think I spent during the whole process, was paying for like 4 big burly dudes to come in and lift 75 boxes of dead weight vinyl from my old apartment to here. Just like drinking a beer, watching them do it. Like, man, I'm sorry, guys. Like,
yeah. Well, the good thing is this 8 blocks away, I overlapped my leases so that I was able to do it over the course of a month. But I think I just need to pare down my record collection to like, 10 or 15 artists, which is kind of funny because the problem with that is my record collection might only consist of 30 artists.
Yeah.
It's like,
you got Pearl Jam, you got Kevin Devine, you got Fright and Rabbit, you got Into It Over It, you got, what else is in there?
9 Inch Nails.
9 Inch Nails, right? That's a big one. Maybe Manchester Orchestra. That might be another one. You got, what will be, How Much Do I Know About You?
I mean, you nailed some of the biggest, if not all of the biggest.
Well, those are the ones that have that really focus and give a shit about vinyl. You know what I mean? Like they put out quality vinyl releases every
year. And then it's the offshoot bands. So it's, it's Right Away Great Captain. It's Bad Books. I mean, you're in 2700 bands, so I have most of those records too. And then like maybe, Death Cab's another one.
Death Cab's a big one, right? That's a big one.
Yeah. And then anything that Tom York's related to. So Radiohead and The Smile and, there are days where I know you go through this because you put stuff on Discogs, but your record collection, which people can see behind you. I mean, how many records do you have? Just a ballpark figure.
Oh, there's full God. And my little Cardinal. Right.
Is he from St. Louis?
How many? I don't know. I've never actually given count. The top of this here, like whatever's up top, I need to cut down like 2 shelves worth of stuff.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that I own any Chud records, but I think I definitely need to trim down what I have, because there's a whole lot of stuff here that is just I never actually listened to it.
Yeah, I mean so
I've been slowly doing that. Like every couple weeks, I'll toss like 5 or 6 things on Discogs and just keep knocking it down until they sell. And it's just stuff that like they're records that I love. But I just never listened to them. I never reached for them. My tastes have changed now that I'm older than they were when I was a teenager, and some of it's very sentimental. It's like stuff that I've just had since I was, that I loved when I was 15, and it feels wrong to get rid of it. But in the same breath, like I just sold, like a couple weeks ago, I sold all my Crass records to somebody. It's like, dude, I'm never gonna listen to fucking Penis Envy ever again. I'm never gonna put that record on. And then and I did put on like Feasting the 5000, and I was like, man, this sounds like shit. It's like dude, that was kind of my realization. Like maybe I'm not punk anymore, and it's just time to let it go. These will be better suited in somebody else's collection that'll appreciate them and listen to them and care for them. And they're just taking up space in here. So,
But that's it. I mean, I think that's the good thing about aging is that you do realize that your tastes change, and when they do, it's kind of like I imagine. I've never asked my parents this, but imagine like you get to a point in your life where your tastes are really refined, and you love the things you love, but you're still welcoming new stuff in. But it's like,
yeah,
yeah, this stuff has a place in my life past. I mean, it's kind of why I'm kind of sad, but I'm also kind of glad that I didn't buy records of all the new metal bands that I was into back then. I'm
yeah,
sad because if I did at the time, I'd have thousands of dollars of records to sell right now. But, I didn't waste my money, collecting every Korn record. I mean, I do own Significant Other and Follow the Leader because those two albums are amazing. But yeah, I don't own Disturbed's first record on vinyl, but if I bought it at the
you need to,
time,
like
yeah.
it's I get it, and I've actually gone through waves. Like the collection now is probably the biggest it's ever been, but when I was touring full time,
Mm-hmm.
so like maybe say, what is it, 2024, so 15 years ago, when Into It Over It was just kind of get started, I moved to Chicago with a pretty decent sized record collection, probably about half, a little less
Wow.
than half of what's here, and had to sell almost all of it to survive that first like 4 years of
Yeah.
touring. And it was like supplemental. It wasn't like I had to sell my records in order to live, but it was definitely like, if I don't sell 20 records this month, I'm not going to be able to pay my rent and go on tour. So sacrificed all of that then over the next 10 years, built it back up just from
Mm-hmm.
touring and having some money to spend, and then getting a job, was able to really fill in the gaps of stuff that I'm missing. But there's still straight up stuff that I'm missing now, where I'm
Yeah.
convinced that I have this particular record and go to look for it to put it on, and I'm like, well, where the fuck is it? Like this? Just recently, I was looking for this record by this band called Five Style, which is like, they were on Sub Pop in the late '90s, but it's just super cool instrumental guitar shit record. This guy Bill Dolan, he's so awesome at guitar. Drummer named Ryan Rapsys, and swore I had it. Went to go grab it, not there, just not there. And it's like, at what point in my 10, 15-year career did I buy, sell, rebuy, and then maybe resell this record again?
Right.
I'm convinced that I own it, but it's just not on the shelf.
Um, it is weird how that works. I have that with, I thought I owned Year Zero, the Nine Inch Nails album. Nope. Don't own it. It's the only one I don't own.
And then you got to get online. You're like, I got to fucking buy this record. Like now I'm obsessed over it. And so probably, in the next few months, I'm probably going to start dwindling down a lot of this stuff. Like there's just bands, like I'm a completist with some bands too. And
Mm-hmm.
realizing that they're, just because I loved that band's first 5 records doesn't mean I loved the last 5. And do I really need to own the last 5 if I'm never going to listen to them?
Yeah.
The pandemic was good for that.
Yes. And
I actually read my whole collection. I listened to all of it. And
that's right.
And I did some thinning of the herd then, because I'd pull something out that would be the next thing, and I'd be like, I don't want to listen to this, and that would be the cue to be like, you should sell that. Yep. Like if you're going through literally everything in A to Z order, and you're pulling stuff out and you don't want to listen to it, get it the fuck out of here. Why do you have it?
I did that I've done that a lot. Like even the, like the emo scene, like the Top Shelf stuff, when I was buying everything when it was coming out. And then I was like, I actually love this album. I think I actually sold the first You Blew It album, and I keep doing what you're doing, because like that's the album I listened to.
Yeah.
And
which I just got to play this week.
That's right. Yeah. You just did that. How were those shows? You produced that record.
I produced that record. I played bass on that record. And the reason that happened was they were coming up to Chicago to make that album, and their bass player had quit like 5 days before they were supposed to come here. And they're like, we don't know what to do. Like, should we find another bass player? Like, should we hire somebody to play bass? I was like, dude, I'll play bass. It's fine. So we rehearsed. We did pre-production in my old rehearsal room, and and then we made the record, and I tracked all the bass in like 3 or 4 hours, like just blew through it. And that whole record was made and like recorded and mixed in 11 days.
Wow.
And so, knocked that out and then sent them on their merry way, and it never came up again. Like I never played it. So we did these shows in LA and San Francisco, and it was the first time ever that the lineup that actually played the album was on stage together playing the album. So I thought it was super cool. I mean, I don't have the context of being in that band for as long as everybody else was in that. So like for me, I'm just like, this is awesome. Like I'm not in charge. I don't have to book anything or tell anybody where to be. I don't have to get money. I'm just a hired gun. I show up, fucking set my shit up, be on stage when I'm supposed to be on stage, play the album, have a good time, and then peace. You know, like it was great for me. And it was also just, it felt more like a bachelor party than it did like a tour, because everyone's older, everyone's got new responsibilities and kids or jobs or you know any number of things that are going on outside of that band, and nobody's being precious about it anymore because there's nothing to lose. You know, it's like the band's already kind of done. So it's like for everyone I think involved, it was just a way to blow off some steam and have some fun together as a bunch of guys playing loud rock songs, which is awesome. You know, I think as we all get older, we just kind of yearn for that again, you know, like less of the business and responsibility and more just the like
just fun. Yeah. I mean, and you're playing an album that people still care about, people still talk about, people still listen to, you know. I really do, you know, we've seen that, and you know, it's no stranger thing to you because you did the Intersections tour last year, right? That was last year. Yeah, that was
last July.
Yeah. I like the fact that we're getting more of these album tours now than we ever did, because you and I are both growing up kids of the album. You know, we love listening to the album, where it's a lost art these days. And I think giving people a chance to get to hear these albums live is really nice. I mean, it's really happening the last couple of years, but even I saw Clarity on the 10th or 15th anniversary. They did a tour, and that same year Queens of the Stone Age did a tour for their first album. But now, like, man, Green Day's doing fucking American Idiot and Dookie on this tour.
In the same tour. And the stage design is incredible for that tour. I get to go, and I was like, after seeing the videos, I was like, fuck, I should have bought a ticket for that. Like, that is so
They're expensive tickets though this year. Really. Like, I looked at getting tickets for, like, they're playing at T-Mobile, you know, where the Mariners play, whatever the fuck it's called these days. And they were like $200, 15 rows off the field. And I'm like, I get it, because like, I don't like it, but I get it. You're paying Smashing Pumpkins, you know, you're paying
Rancid.
You're paying Linda Linda's. But you know, Ticketmaster is taking $65, $70 of that ticket.
Totally, dude. It's fun. Yeah. And you know, and you're speaking of the album thing, the Pearl Jam was just here. And it was like I didn't get to go this time, which actually felt like a sin that I wasn't at Wrigley.
I figured you didn't go because you didn't post about it.
I didn't post about it. You would have seen it. But it was like 3 days after the anniversaries of 10 and No Code. And my buddy Andy was playing New Blue with me, he went with his mom to both of them. And I was like, if they do either one of those albums in full at one of these shows, I'm going to freak the fuck out. Like, the one time I don't go, one time I don't get tickets to see this. And I was convinced that was what they were going to do. Like, they would walk out night one and do all of No Code. They'd walk out night two and do all of 10. And they didn't do that, thankfully. So I didn't have a ton of regret. But I swore that was going to be the plan. Like,
that would have been sick. They did do it the year that I moved from New York to Seattle in 2014. They played No Code in its entirety in Denver, and then I think they played 10 in a couple of cities, including Philly. God help us if they ever do like an actual, like, we're going to do 10 shows and we're going to play every album.
That's what they should do. They should do the Sphere. They should do the Sphere in Las Vegas and do every album. And
they should play Seattle and do every album.
You see what I'm saying, though, right? Like, that would fucking slay. Like, every Pearl Jam fan from all around the world would just go to Vegas for a week and
exactly. You know, they teased. There was a rumor because, you know, the Climate Pledge Arena opened up here a couple years ago, which is the new, you know, where the fucking whatever it was called used to be, where the Sonics used to play, and so there was a rumor going on early on that Pearl Jam was going to do a residency. And nothing came of it. this year when Pearl Jam played 2 nights, Eddie stoked those rumors real
Again.
hard. Yeah, he said it twice. He's like, maybe we'll come back and we'll do this. Maybe we'll do it frequently. If they do a residency, it's going to be like between you or Scott or Mike, I'm going to have to rent out my spare bedroom.
Yeah. We'll just be there. I'll come for a week.
But let me ask you on like early life. What is there an album or a band that kind of inspired you to pick up the guitar for the first time, like, or something that you
easily? It's Dookie by Green Day, 100%, without a doubt. Like easily, the album that was like, because there were albums before they were like, I want to be a rock star.
Yeah,
that's a much different thing for a young kid to say. Like, and that was anything from like Zendada Manada by the Police to Nevermind to 10 to Super Unknown to, I was born in the era of grunge. Like that was, I was born in 84, which means by the time grunge was hitting, I was like 8 or 9, which is like age to be really into that. And so grunge was my shit. But that always felt like a barrier for entry there, like even with Nirvana, it's like a little too young to be able to grasp how something like that could be done.
Yeah.
92, I'm 7, or 8.
Yeah. And it's like loud and crazy.
But like 94, 96 starts to roll around and you get Dookie and you get the Blue album kind of like back to back.
Yeah.
And then you're a little older, you're like 10 and you begin to grasp the mechanics of what it looks like to be able to do something like that. And the songs on Dookie they're really smart songs, which you learn when you begin to pick up a guitar. But when you don't have a guitar in your hand, they kind of feel dumber than Nevermind. Like, I could do this. Like, this seems approachable. And so punk rock was kind of the guiding thing into being able to be like, I want to own a guitar. I think I can play this song. And so that was the earliest memory of being like, let's start a band. Like me and my friends in elementary school being like, let's start a band. And then the only reason I picked up a bass guitar was because I lost a game of rock, paper, scissors. That was literally it. And I don't regret it because I actually love playing bass in a band way more than I love playing guitar in a band.
I think I could grasp that. I mean, watching you with Pet Sim versus watching you, play guitar and singing into it, like you're just having a lot more fun because you don't have to concentrate as much. No, you actually,
because I sing in both bands, you actually have to kind of concentrate about the same because unless like the Into It Over It guitar parts are harder than the bass lines, but it's harder to sing in rhythm while holding down rhythm on a bass guitar. You can kind of be a little sloppier and imperfect on a guitar that you can't do on a bass. So there is a level of precision with bass, but what I find exciting about bass is you can really drive the melody of an entire tune by changing the notes. And, and some of my favorite bass players were like Rob DeLeo from Stone Temple Pilots, Matt Sharp, Jeff Ament, Nate Mendel, just these guys who play and are able to turn the whole shape and vibe of a song around based on how they guide the melody.
Yeah. I remember
not just root note bass players, which don't get me wrong, I love a root note bass player, but they think melodically about what they're doing and how they can influence where the song goes.
Yeah, especially Rob from Stone Temple Pilots. You said that, and I immediately just like some of their bass lines just kind of played right in my head immediately.
They're incredible. Like the DeLeo brothers in general are two, I think, of the most unsung heroes in grunge music. They're just incredible songwriters. You can tell they've been playing music together their whole lives because they are just so in tune with what the other is doing and think really creatively about their songs. I think a lot of people look at that band and only think of like
Wyland,
but also like those earlier songs on Core that are just that kind of just sound like a rip-off amalgamation of a bunch of things that happened before it. But when they get into Purple and Tiny Music, it's like they really become their own band at that point. And like they're really doing some shit that no one else was doing then, like namely on guitar. It's just full of good guitar tones and like super interesting choices and just really like setting themselves apart. I think those two records are just like
Purple's my favorite record of theirs, hands down. And I think I often say Interstate Love Song might be the greatest pop rock song that was written in our lifetime. Like,
dude.
it is concise. It's a little too short, but man, I could see like a band like the Beatles having written that 30 years prior.
Oh, dude. And then like Tripping on a Hole is the best guitar solo of the 90s. Easily. Might be my favorite guitar solo ever done.
Wow.
But it's so unique. Like, the guitar isn't that distorted. It's like the tone's kind of bad. Like, it actually like maybe doesn't sound good, and like, but it's just so well played, and it's so melodic, and it's just like it's not written like, it doesn't sound like a dude just wanking off. It sounds like he really crafted a guitar solo and then drank 5 beers and then just played the shit out of it. Like, it's like kind of drunk, but not, and like, it's just perfectly done. I would like to imagine he either just did it. I would like to imagine he either took like 100 takes to get it right, or he just did one take and was
I still remember listening to Purple for the first time and not understanding what the fuck the secret song was. 12 Gracious Melodies with the guy that's singing like a lounge singer. I love that.
And that, like, those are just, those kind of elements of 90s rock kind of shaped the silliness that I like to bring to the stuff that I do. Like, even like some of the bands I'm in aren't as irreverent as others. Like Into It Over, it's not as irreverent as Pet Symmetry for sure, but there's flashes of it in there. And it just comes from that sense of humor of 90s rock where like most of it's kind of silly. Like, it takes itself seriously, but it also kind of doesn't. And like, you can spot that even in like the Nirvana records, even on the Pearl Jam records, like a song like Bugs. Like, what the fuck is that? Like,
I have no clue, but I love it.
Yeah. So, they weren't afraid to kind of be a little silly then. And I think that is something that when you go through as a musician anyway, at least I went through this, and I think a lot of bands can relate to this. You go through like kind of the middle section of your career and you want people to take you seriously. And you believe in your head like, well, I'm an artist, I want to be treated as such, and you can kind of lose that. You were talking at the beginning about the emo thing. I feel like that is a thing that I think people who play in emo bands or who historically were in a band that could be considered emo at one point, try to run away from at one point,
right,
before eventually just accepting that, that time of my life was a really good time. And, who cares actually what kind of music we're making? Like, if someone wants to call it that, then that's fine. That's awesome. If somebody wants to call it something else, that's totally cool too. Like, you begin to care less about the semantics and more about how it felt and how it could feel.
Yeah. And look, I mean, labeling types of music has always been kind of stupid. Like grunge, all the Seattle bands hated that. And look, emo short for emotional. If your music isn't emotional, then it's boring. It's soulless. There's nothing really to listen to.
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, the emo tag to me is it's a genre definer in a way, just that symbolizes a sound. It's kind of like punk and jazz and hardcore music, but also like melodic rock kind of all melded together. Like, and some of it's not sonic. It's like the ethos of punk with the sound of rock, but all of it's in kind of major key. There's not a whole lot of minor key stuff going on. And it's evolved in so many different ways since 1987 that like it's in a really exciting time right now where like there's young kids who have access to just so much music.
Yeah.
And which we didn't have when I was growing up. Like, if you heard about something that you thought was going to be cool, or if a friend showed you a band of a CD that they had, you had to find the CD or else you weren't going to hear it. Like,
there was nowhere to ever just obtain it sitting at home.
You had to just luck out and go to the store and hope that they had a copy of it there. And if they did, you have to just wait until a future trip when you could maybe eventually find that record again. Yeah, and it was all word of mouth. You were either at the show and saw them and could buy it, or like you my dad would take me to this place called Tunes in Voorhees, New Jersey. It was our record store there, CD store. And I would just cruise the used bin to find some of the stuff that I've been looking for, or just find stuff that was on like a similar record label or the same record label of something else that I found that I really liked. Mm-hmm. Like if it said J Tree on it or Polyvinyl on it or, Big Wheel Recreation on it or Doghouse on it, then I would buy it, and those are just a few examples. But like, you'd be like, oh, well, I really like so-and-so band, so I'll just get the CD's $3. I'll just pick this up and hope.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all it is. I mean, I think I was, I have an older brother, so there were bands that he introduced me to, but it was MTV and it was Beavis and Butthead. It was 120 Minutes. It was Headbangers Ball. That's what formed my music taste almost entirely. I remember I didn't even I knew who Ozzy was and I had heard some Ozzy songs, but I didn't know Ozzy's his entire, discography as a solo and Black Sabbath. And I was listening to a local radio station, WBAB on Long Island, and they had Fingers Metal Show, which was a metal show on Friday or Saturday nights. And I won the Ozzy Live and Loud compilation. And it opened up my entire world because I'm like, oh, this is a Black Sabbath song, but this is an Ozzy song. And it's, you just didn't you just didn't know how to discover music until you found the music, and then you started discovering the music.
And we had a bunch of good radio stations where I grew up in Jersey too. It's like Y100, and, WKDU, and then we had the one that I really loved was WPRB Princeton, and that was something I fell into later. By the time I was 14 or 15 was when I found WPRB. But they would do a show later on, which was called My Saxophone Is Your Guitar. And or it was either My Saxophone Is Your Guitar or My Guitar Is Your Saxophone. I think it's My Saxophone Is Your Guitar. And that was a show that played almost every evening. That's my memory. Someone on the show is going to correct you and say there was only Tuesday nights or some shit. And that's okay. They're right. They are right. Not me. But I found so much good music that way. I would set up my little boombox recorder and just hit record on the tape. And and then maybe go out. I maybe wouldn't be home. But I'd come home from band practice or something and have the tape and then be able to re-listen to it and just ad nauseum figure out, what they were playing. It was such a good mix of good lost kind of indie rock and rock stuff, a lot of 80s stuff, a lot of cool jazz, ambient music, and it was just a hodgepodge of all this great shit. And that's kind of what I feel younger musicians now, who maybe have aligned with a particular genre, are still taking influence from all these other genres and worlds and applying that to what they're doing. And I mean, that's kind of what Into It Over's doing now too. It's just this wild mix of jazz and ambient and progressive rock and emo and punk. And, the last couple of records we've made are just a collection of ideas and perspectives. And it's been super fun to make music that way, especially with three other guys who all come from different backgrounds too.
Well, your growth in that band is amazing to see. I mean, from Proper to Intersections is this huge kind of leap. And then, and from the last two albums from that, it's, and then even the B-sides album that you just released this year. I mean,
frankly, I've done some reflection, and Interesting Decisions might be my favorite, one.
Really?
Super cool. And it's that we weren't thinking too hard. It was just following what felt good. And, and I mean, those would have been another LP's worth of songs. We called it B-sides, but it was just stuff that we were using as a vehicle to put out a couple more records in the last few years and do some splits with some friends. And then we realized it all kind of worked. Not all kind of, it really does work really well as an LP.
Yeah. So, it really does. And it sounds lush, just like the last two albums have sounded more, I look at Intersections as being this album. It's introducing yourself. It's showing everybody you're introducing yourself to Chicago. That's kind of what that album feels like. But Figure and well, where are we at? Yeah. Anyway,
I was about the point. I could this something. It's right there.
Yes. Well, you made. Why am I forgetting? standards. Thank you.
Yeah, we did that. We did it to tape. That was the first and only record we did completely. Like if you have a vinyl version of that record, that particular thing, like to have that record on vinyl, it never saw a computer.
Yeah.
We recorded it to tape. We mastered it to tape. We cut the lacquers from the tapes. Like if there's the CD had to go get imported digitally into a computer. So if you had a CD, that saw a computer. But the vinyl variant of that, like not a single computer touched that record. Which
sounds lush and beautiful.
Which was a badge of honor. That was kind of like I'd never done a record that way.
Yeah.
And we really wanted to see if we could do it. And John Vanderslice helped us produce it. We did it at the old Tiny Telephone, which doesn't even exist anymore. That studio's gone. And yeah, it's a cherished experience. Like we were in San Francisco for about a month, and we wrote it in a cabin in Vermont, like a remote cabin in Vermont for a month. And so it's just two really good, like kind of polar opposite experiences of solitude and hard work that like made that album. And, I haven't gone back to that experience. I don't yearn for that experience anymore because now I have it. It's actually a lot more fun for me to take my time on a record and Figure and Interesting Decisions are two examples of that. Those are collections of songs that were years in the making. And like, we have our own studio now, which we built, which we can do whatever we want. And it's full of great gear and talent. And just like, it's made the record making process a little more enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
But I know that we could do it again if we put our minds to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. But it feels like that, you writing it up in Vermont and then recording it with Vanderslice. It's kind of like you caught lightning in a bottle, but that's it's not that you can't replicate that, but that specific experience is it's definitely a noteworthy one. But Figure came out May of 2020
September 2020.
Yeah. September.
It was supposed to come out May of 2020.
Right.
And then the pandemic happened and we were kind of like, oh, maybe we should wait. Like, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to go on tour right now. And everybody at that time was so innocent for believing that we would only be in that for
a couple weeks or whatever.
Yeah, maybe or less, And so we were very, eventually it got to the point where we were like, we just got to put this out. Like, I have to move forward. And so it came out that September.
It was September. Yeah. That to me, for my experience, that's a very important album because of when it came out. And because I was like literally walking around 12, 14 miles a day delivering the mail. So it would be one of those things that I'd listen to daily. Just to have a sense of like, oh, this is my friend's album. Like I love it. And it's keeping me company during the pandemic. But it's hard for me because like every time you got a new album, I'm like, oh, this is his best album. And then this comes out and I'm like, oh, this is his best album. Like that's a good problem to have.
I appreciate that very much. We're working on what's going to be next right now. And I think longtime fans of the band are going to really like what we have in the hopper.
Sweet.
Without saying too much. And it's kind of like, but now we're in this situation where we can just kind of do whatever we want. And this is kind of like I wouldn't say it's like taking a sidestep or even taking a step backwards, but it's definitely more like hey, we're having a lot of fun working on this one particular thing. Let's extrapolate on that a little more and kind of revisit some vibes that the project had at one point, and which has been pretty cool to just kind of rock the fuck out.
Good. Yeah. But I think it's also from, my personal experience of knowing you, it's like you yearn to not do the same thing over and over because you don't want to get bored.
No, dude. Could you imagine? Like, I have friends who play in bands. I'm not going to name names, but it's like spinning wheels is maybe the wrong way to put it, but like there is definitely like it feels like the lust to be challenged is gone. Mm-hmm. And that to me is hard to grasp and hard to watch.
Yeah.
If I weren't consistently challenging myself or wanting to like go take the next step, and that doesn't mean like sonically,
sure,
but like feeling like what you're working on is like exciting and new and fresh and just like, how can I be better? and
Mm-hmm.
how can I make improvements on where I was before or what I've done before. And sometimes it feels like bands, they'll make a new record because it's kind of what you're supposed to do, and it gives you a reason to go out and tour and play songs for people. But it's like then they go and play and tour, and they're just playing the songs from 20 years ago, and you're like, well, what the fuck did you make a new record for then?
Yeah.
like don't you want to, like, what I mean? And that's how I am. Like, if we're going on the road, don't get me wrong, I love playing the old tunes. I love playing
Sure.
but it's going to be a mix of everything. And some nights might be, and this goes back to like I think bands that we really like. Like, if I go see a band, I want to not expect what I'm about to get.
Yes. Correct.
I want to feel like I saw a show that maybe someone else isn't going to get to see.
Mm-hmm.
And at any given moment, Into It Over It will know anywhere between 50 and 75 songs.
I love that.
And we'll play some of the same 5 or 6 every day that are like we're always going to play Upstate Blues, right? Like, we're always going to play that one. But like, there's going to be, I want the rest of it to kind of be a surprise. I want there to be several moments in the set where people are like, whoa, like that fucking song, like that's exciting as a showgoer to, and I feel like Into It Over, it's not a singles band. We're a band where, to your point, we're an album band.
Yeah.
So people like the band, like the albums, and they maybe like some more than others, but like they listen for the full thing. Like, we don't have like single songs that people really latch on to.
You have like one or two. I mean, like Midnight Carol Street, arguably the most popular song, or Anchor, for you solo. But yeah, no, I got to give you this compliment because it's true. You're brilliant on albums, like track sequencing.
I appreciate
all of your albums really like, but I mean, I think it's like, aside from our friendship, I understand who you are as a music fan through the fact that you know how to create an album and sequence an album. Like, sometimes it's the most gut-wrenchingly bad thing about some of these bands I love. I'm like, why is this fucking song first? Or why is this song in the middle of the album? It definitely sounds like it's an album ender.
Yeah.
You don't have to go Peter Jackson on your album and end the album 4 times.
Right. I think like the biggest pitfall that bands fall into, and I work on this when I produce records for bands, and you'll notice it now that I pointed out. I think you'll notice it if you're familiar with my own work, is that like every song needs the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing can't be repeated on other songs on the record.
Yeah.
Like, each song needs its own special little fucking, the thing you can latch onto about that one particular song that makes it special.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make 12 songs all have their special moment, then not any one song is going to really stick out above the other one. Like, people will have their favorites, but there isn't going to be like, it's not going to feel like the album starts really strong and then kind of takes a nosedive. And some of the best records you'll hear that are the most like the ones with no skips on them are the ones, each song has that moment where you're just like, fuck, that's so cool. Like, or, oh, what a cool tone or a sound, or they decided to put that instrument in there as like a feature, or they have so-and-so guesting on this tune. Like, those are the moments that really keep people engaged as a listener throughout the course of a whole album.
Yeah.
So, if you're listening, if anyone's watching this, or if you're Dave listening to any of the Into It Over It or Pet Sim or their stuff, like, you can go back and you'll be like, oh, that's what Evan was talking about. That's the moment. That's the thing that makes this song different than all the other ones. And producing records is the same way. I'd look at it that way too. It's like each tune needs that one thing that you can remember,
How often on your own records do you spend thinking about or taking care of sequencing? Like, you've got all 12 tracks, you've got all 14 tracks, but like, how does that work? I've never asked that to anybody that creates their own albums, but how much time goes into sequencing?
Well, I'm in the middle of doing it right now for a record. And this one has become a particularly challenging one because there's like a few different ways the album could start, and there's a few different ways the album could end.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that me and my bandmates are in disagreement about it, because we're not, but we're in the process of all sharing our own versions of how we see the record, and then discussing what we think might be the best way to go about it. And so Whereas like I'm of the opinion that I want to lead with kind of the strangest song because I think it sets a tone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even that strange of a tune. It's just strange in comparison maybe to the rest of the record. But whereas like, you know, my bandmate wants to lead with something a little more traditional. That also has like kind of its own strange moment to it, but something that immediately feels familiar, you know? So whereas like I'm a big fan, like if you're a fan, I mean, 80% of the people who hear this record are going to be people who are already familiar with the band. So like hitting them with something that's refreshing, I think is like, because if you were listening, you'd be like, whoa, like, like what am I stepping into, you know? And the opposite frame of mind would be like, well, you could immediately turn people off if you're hitting them with something that's so different, you know? So we're in the middle of figuring this out now. And I don't know how it's going to end because we're not out of the ending of this conversation, but it does take time. It takes like, you know, it takes listening to the record, the batch of songs, probably a good 15, 20 times. And like just slightly rearranging things, like whether that's by what key the songs are in, or, you know, how one song ends and the next one starts, or, you know, kind of feeling like it's like, if you ever made a mixtape for somebody?
Of course.
Right. So it's like, there's an art to that. It's like fucking What's His Nut says in High Fidelity, where he's like, there's an art to making a mixtape.
Yeah.
Like you want to start strong, but you don't want to go too strong. You want to be able to give yourself the ability to go up, and then you got to cool it off. And there's peaks and valleys there. Like you gotta kind of give the listener a ride, because you don't want to fatigue them. You want to make sure that they're able to kind of recover from the moments that are really massive, and be able to really like sit and enjoy the moments that are very chill. It's an art. And,
it is.
And, you know, and I think like there are two things that I think bands kind of gloss over. I mean, there's many things I think bands gloss over, but there's two especially. I think like bands gloss over their artwork. I think that is bullshit. I think the art is just as important as anything else that you're presenting. And I think I've proven that through the records I release. I think we take the artwork very seriously. And the other is the sequencing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a journey. You're giving the listener a journey through this art that you've created. You're telling a story with those songs. And like, so to look at it more from a storytelling perspective, instead of like, well, we have to front load the album with all what we think is the best stuff, because, you know, it's then you're just leaving listeners with a kind of a shitty ending.
Yeah.
And you're not kind of like placing the songs that, for lack of a better word, may seem weaker between two strong songs, which then boosts the strength of the potentially weaker song, because they're going to want to listen through to get to the next stronger tune, you know? So like, now I'm rambling.
No, it's true, because like, I mean, and maybe it's a byproduct of the way that the music industry has gone in general. Like albums aren't as important. Album artwork isn't as important, but in the world that you exist in and that I exist in as a listener, and you as both, you know, a creator and a listener, vinyl has never gone out of style in our lives. And like listening to an album has never gone out of style. So is that, you know,
a great example of this, especially with the vinyl thing, a really good example of this.
He's checking his vinyl.
This record.
Yes.
This is Codes and Keys by Death Cab for Cutie. The first time I heard this record, I wasn't a big fan. And I'm a huge Death Cab for Cutie fan. As you would
know the same on that.
My fucking music, you would realize that. But so the vinyl sequence of this record, which they also made to tape. This is also a fully taped record. The vinyl sequence of this record is where it shines, because the way it's a double LP, there's only, and it's cut to, I think it's cut to 45. So there's only like 2 or 3 songs per side. And the way that it plays on the turntable gives you that moment to really reflect on what you just listened to, flip the record, and then enjoy another experience. And it plays and hits so much harder in this medium than it does in any other way. Like I actually love this record if I'm listening to it on vinyl. It also just sounds awesome. It's a great vinyl pressing too. Like everything about it just sounds, it's like a pristinely made record. So having that experience with it changed my whole vibe on this album.
I'll have to go back to it. I have it on vinyl. I haven't listened to it in a bunch of years, but yeah, I'll take your word for it. And then
It'll hit differently than you listening to it on Spotify. It'll
all right.
genuinely hit differently.
Man,
You'll have a moment, like track 3 or whatever will end, and you'll have to flip the record, and you'll have like a second, like sit with how that ended. And like we did Figure the same way. We made sure Figure is sequenced to be 3 songs per side or 2 or 3 songs per side for. Oh no, it's 3 songs on 4 sides, and those songs are meant to be like a little batch. Like it's meant to sit that way. It's not meant to be consumed in like a single fucking row. It's meant to be like flip side A and enjoy side B now. And like this is a different part of the story. We're going on a different journey. Yeah, that was the whole intention.
It's so funny. The first time I listened to that album on vinyl, and I got to get the track name so I don't look like an idiot.
Not even on the back. It's not even on the back.
Damn it, Evan.
I know.
But
I'm in this phase right now with my records where I don't want there to be any name or any info on them.
I want to say, what's the name? First Exposure is the first lyric of the.
Dressing down, addressing you.
Yes. Okay. So first time I listened to the record, I must have accidentally hit the switch on the speed when I flipped the record, and it's hilarious hearing your voice in a slower speed.
Sounding like Michael Mouse, you mean?
Yes. And it left an indelible mark on my brain that every time I listen to the album before that track hits, I hear your voice slowed down in my head. It's a very weird thing. But
that's right, because it's cut to 45. So if you were at 33, it'd be even slower, right?
Yeah. And but it is a beautiful package and a beautiful record, and really I know I told you this, but it really helped me during that time, especially after going through like a gnarly fucking breakup too.
It is decidedly a breakup record. Like that is very, and that makes it harder to be the one. Like it's probably my first or second favorite thing I've ever worked on, but it's like it does come with baggage in that way that like the other records don't come with. Like,
right.
You know, like it's just like Interesting Decisions doesn't come with baggage. It's just songs. It's cool songs. And then like Intersections doesn't come with any, Intersections and Standards don't really come with any baggage, but Figure is like, yeah, there's stuff to like dig through and work through with that one. And I can see why people wouldn't necessarily reach for it. It's like a challenging time right now to be hit over the head with depressing stuff. We get enough depressing stuff everywhere we go, like on the news, on the phone, on the fucking, in our neighborhoods, in our streets, in our cities, in the country, and everywhere. Like it's just like we're getting pounded over the head with sad shit and frustrating shit all the time. So who am I as a fucking white guy with a beard in my mid to late 30s to tell you about how woe is fucking me that I am going through a breakup? You know what I mean? And I think there's still a place for that, but it's like I totally sympathize with anyone who's like, you know what, I'm just gonna not with this one for now, you know, like but it had to be made. It was the way for me. It was personal recovery. It had to be done.
Sure. And I mean, I enjoy listening to heavier music because it helps me kind of level out what's going on in my head. But at the same time, like all of that, what you said is true. All of the shitty things, you know, that are always happening outside of literally our rooms and maybe inside our rooms, you know, they're eating our pets and everything, but you know,
but have you seen the memes with fucking Alf?
Yes. Yes, it's amazing. I mean, it's terrifying. It's terrifying, but it's, you know, but that's the thing. We need these exterior things to make us feel like we're not alone. And I've always turned to music for that. In knowing, you know, in knowing that like there's somebody I can relate to in some way, shape, or form, or their lyrics make me feel like I can relate to what they're saying, even if they're veiled or whatever. And I did want to ask you about that as a lyricist. You know, one of my favorite lyricists, and I always respected the hell out of, you know, the lyrics you write, but where does you talk about creating music and picking up a bass, picking up a guitar, being in all these bands producing, but lyrically, where did you like kind of hone your songwriting skills? Like, how did you, is there any specific thing that kind of helps you get to that point?
I think I found a couple lyricists that I really love.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was a really good example of one that was like kind of a mentor was Steve Paponi, my late friend Steve Paponi. Steve sang in Up, Up, Down, Down, Left, Right, BA Start, which was a band I was in when I was like 18 or 19.
Mm-hmm.
But like Steve was kind of our local hero. He was like that band was the band we all looked up to. That was the band we all admired. That was the band that we were all kind of like watching how they did things from not just a songwriting perspective, but also from like a DIY hustle perspective. Like Steve didn't like how booking agents did their business, so he became his own booking agent. Steve didn't like what the recording studio experience was like, so he built his own studio. And Steve didn't like, like he would find the things that he didn't appreciate about the music business and about our local scene and just take charge. Just be like, well, I'm just going to fucking figure it out. I'm going to learn how to do it. And he was the first person I knew who ever did something like the Internet EP, which was like record an EP and put it up, pay what you want.
Yeah.
On the internet where you could just download it. And he was the first person I ever saw that did anything like that. That was 2004. Like that was way before bands were doing shit like that. And
it was a couple years before Radiohead did it.
Yeah, which was a model for what Into It Over did. That's how Into It Over started. It was a model but like, so Steve was a really fun lyricist, and he's not the first person to write kind of like overly confessional, personal, kind of quirky, kind of funny lyrics. He's not the first person to do that.
Yeah.
But he had a delivery and a confidence and a way about him that made the songs charming and relatable, and made, kind of you felt warm listening to him. It was like you could really get a sense of who he was based on his lyric writing. And I really appreciated that. That really resonated with me. Like there are a lot of songs, like some of my favorite songs of late too. Like a really good example currently is my buddy Caleb, who is he goes by the name Sinai Vessel. And I've liked Caleb's songs for a while. Like he's been doing that band for 10 years or whatever, 12 years. But his newest record just hit me like a ton of bricks. It's just like, because the lyric writing on it is finally like, I really believe him. And I promise the songs are true. It's like, they have to be. There's no way you could write stuff like that and have it not be true. And so like, that was where I really leaned in as a lyricist. And because it wasn't in the Progress.
No.
Progress didn't have that. There is some real confessional shit in there, and the way that I write lyrics in that band is different than Mike. Like you can tell who wrote the lyrics for which song because of what they are,
Sure.
But that skill was really refined during 52 Weeks, where it was just like, I don't have enough time to be maybe more poetic than I think I need to be. Like I have just enough time to say what I'm saying, to sing what I'm singing about, and say it as clearly and most transparently as possible. And that's what became of it. I think that Steve was probably the biggest influence, but like also like those early Death Cab records were a big one. Like Archers of Loaf was another big one. They were like such a and even a lot of the grunge bands that I loved, like the Weezer is another great one. Like those lyrics are fun. They're like, they're just, and especially the Pinkerton and the Blue album. Like they're just like albums that are burned in my head from a young age, where that was probably that, and like the Green Day shit, the stuff we were talking about as before, like What Made You Pick Up a Guitar. Those are the same albums that were like, wow, they're singing about just their regular days. This is the stuff they're actually going through. This is the stuff they're actually doing. And like, what's more relatable than that? So now I'm moving into this stage of my career where I've developed this voice and this delivery. And I had a friend tell me a couple years ago, we were talking about Pet Symmetry. Or they were talking. I didn't bring it up. But she had a comment that was like, if Pet Symmetry was like 15% dumber You guys could be the biggest band in the world.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, yeah, just like, instead of like adding more lyrics, try taking some away. Like, just when you get to a part with a good hook, just sing the hook a second time. And I was like, that's a great idea. So we wrote this new album. And it'll come out next year, but all the songs are there were a few parameters that I set for myself, and one of them was that all the songs needed to be love songs, because coming off a Figure, I needed to write an album that was like, that felt a little more joyous, you know.
Yeah.
And 2 was that I would strive to be 15% dumber.
I don't know. I'm excited to hear that, because I don't know how, like, I mean, I guess we all have the propensity to be dumber by choice. So, you know, I can be, I mean, I shoved my face into an entire piece of cake last night live on YouTube for my 3rd anniversary for my channel. And like, that was me being dumb, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I mean, dumber's maybe not dumber in that context was like, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
You know, like when you get the good hook, say it again. You know, like don't, and I'm guilty of that a lot. Like we'll get to the part where that's like, could be the hook, and I'll just say an additional 30 words just to like really tell the whole story, because I feel like, well, I need to tell the whole story. Like it's got to be, it has to be complete. And then looking back on this experience, being like, no, you know what? I only have to tell what I want to tell. Yeah. And if something is memorable, like I should stick to it. So like the hook, I'm very confident in how smart the delivery is, but not to the point where I'm cannibalizing itself by trying to think too hard about it. It's like, no, I can just trust the process and who we are as a band and who I am as a lyric writer to put forth that what I'm doing is enough, and be able to just enjoy a chorus for a change.
Yeah. You're not a big chorus guy. I mean, I think that's the thing. Dude, that's the thing about Intersections.
Intersections has no choruses. There's maybe one, you know, like there's barely any choruses on that record. There's some on Standards, and Figure's got a few, but like I'm not a big chorus guy, you know, and even the Pet Sim records are like kind of poppier versions of, you know, music that I would write, but like a lot of them don't have hooks. And so this one, I was like, how can I get 3 choruses in one song? You know, how can I make sure every part is a hook?
Yeah.
And now, there's a really good Dashboard confessional song, which, you know, I, like most people of a certain age, like everyone had a moment with Dashboard, but there was a song that I think is just a brilliant fucking tune of his that is on the Shrek 2 soundtrack. It's called As Lovers Go, right? And this fucking song, listen to it at some point. It's like 4 choruses in a row. Every part is a chorus. And the song's only 2 minutes, 45 seconds. It's like a short tune, but every part is memorable. And you're like, how did he do this? Like it just goes from chorus to chorus to chorus, and it feels so natural. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
It is funny that they're on the Shrek 2 soundtrack, because they're on the Spider-Man 2 or 1 soundtrack. Like it kind of unlocks another reason why that band is so big, because like Screaming Infidelities, I remember that song, but I can't remember them having a huge song. But being on soundtracks is like having a huge song.
Huge songs, hands down. It's a huge song. He like Chris, of all the people I've ever met through music, in my opinion, no one can write a hook better than that guy. And he's like, really good. It's just a natural skill. It's a natural talent that this dude has. But that song specifically is like, that was the gold standard going into making this new Pet Sim record, where it was just like, I got to try to figure out how to do what he just did, because that is so fucking cool that you could make your the whole song, the whole album, just full of like memorable, catchy parts.
Same era, another guy who can do it, Jim Atkins. Jimmy.
Oh my God, dude, 1,000,000,000%. And like, same deal. He's just like the vocal production on those records is so well done.
Yeah.
It's just so well done. And I couldn't help but dork out about it for a little bit, because it was like, dude, that is the thing that I think people may talk about the least with Jimmy World when it comes to that. Like, because they sound great, the songs are great. Like everything about that band is just like, they're one of the best rock bands in the world, I think. and emo or not, right? Like they're just a great fucking rock band. Like to me, it's like in this day and age, it's like Foo Fighters, Jimmy World, like the two best rock bands, like modern rock. And the vocal production is the thing that I think people kind of gloss over, but it's like that. It's just hooks. It's like big, like stadium sized hooks all the time. It's
and
really a skill.
And he sounds great live too. It's like one of those things where like you can't imagine somebody could be that good live on record, but he is. And I mean, between the sweetness and the middle, it's like those two songs are going to live on way past everybody that exists on this planet.
Yeah. They'll outlive him for sure.
It's
like just massive.
Yeah. And another guy that kind of does that just thrown into the rock, Jack White, like,
oh yeah.
I mean, I often think about how the residual checks he gets for Seven Nation Army, because now it is played in every fucking stadium around the globe.
Dude. And I mean, and actually my feeling about like the White Stripes, at least specifically, are that no one can write a catchier guitar hook than he can. Yeah, like I find myself singing the guitar lines more than I sing the vocal lines, but the guitar lines are like very memorable. Like they're just huge hooks on like huge riffs, just like enormous. Like everyone can sing that. And
that's the thing. That's what people in soccer stadiums around
literally
the globe.
Everyone can sing that riff. And when that song comes on in the stadium, they're not singing the lyrics. They're singing the riff.
Yeah. I don't remember that being a thing when we were younger, but Metallica is another kind of piece of that. Like you watch their performances around the world, especially Master of Puppets, and people sing the guitar part. 80,000 fucking people singing the guitar parts. Yeah. Like I don't remember that being a thing ever. And it's really just interesting how, culture has shifted that way. Like the only thing I could ever remember is, We Will Rock You, the doom, doom. Like you go to a hockey game and people are doing that, but I can't remember people singing guitar parts at sports stadiums or concerts or anything like that.
Brain Stew might be the only other one.
Yeah. Yeah. You remember the Godzilla version though?
Oh yeah, they just have like a fucking crazy lizard screaming over it. What the fuck is that about?
Yeah, we lived in weird times. You have a little more time. Did you?
Of course, I do. Absolutely.
Okay,
I just say a quick Brain Stew story, real quick.
Yeah.
So I have this idea, and I might not be the one to pull it off, but if anyone could pull off this idea, I would please film it, because I think it would be a lot of fun. It's you and like 10 of your buddies to go to Guitar Center one day, and you all go in at different times, like all within like the same 30-minute period, but you don't look as though you're all coming in together. Like everybody's
staggering.
And no one, it's meant to be that you don't know each other. You're 10 strangers, but you're not your friends. And everyone kind of goes in and they talk to a sales rep. Yeah, I'm looking for, this or the other thing. Find your guitar. Hey, do you mind if I plug this into an amp? And everybody's kind of plugging in all around the guitar section. They're all plugged in and they're like focused on their things. And then finally, when everyone is hooked up, everyone looks up and counts down like 1, 2, 3. And everyone at once starts playing Brain Stew. And just see what happens.
Somebody needs to do they let you test mics and amps at a I would totally be the 11th person in there and just sing it.
Just singing it. Well, that'd be also awesome if all 10 of you playing it all sang it loud, sang it. Yeah, like that. If I worked in a Guitar Center and that started happening, we're just like, oh my fucking god.
I'm so glad that band has not just stayed relevant, but they're peaking again and again.
They find ways to reinvent their career. And at this point, all Green Day needs to do is literally write another Dookie. That's all they have to do, which sounds hard. It sounds easy and also sounds hard at the same time. It's like when but frankly, if they just wrote a fucking ripping punk record of songs about walking the dog or going to the grocery store, or just they could just be literally singing about any dumb fucking thing they have to do during their day, it'd be huge.
Yeah.
Like I feel like that's the move that they should do, is just like a good like to tape rock punk record, not overthinking it. Same gear they used the first go around, just like do it again. People fucking freak out. Like they'd be really, really excited about that. Like a return to form Green Day record, you know, like
I think their newest album is at least somewhat in that right direction. Like I hadn't listened to the last couple as much, but the new one, Saviors, has some really good, just kind of like punk songs. And, you know, he's singing about his sobriety in some of it, but he's also still singing about the shit that's going on in this country, which, you know, they should be, because they have a voice.
They have a platform. They have a huge platform that they can influence the next generation of kids, like what I was when I was 10, to pick up a guitar and learn how to play that whole record.
Yeah. American Idiot did that. I mean, American Idiot was at a time where people
was
were
the second coming, you know?
Yeah.
But the song that set it off was American Idiot.
Yeah.
Which sounds like fucking Dookie. That was literally the tune. Like, and I mean, even then, like, you know, it's just ripping off Dillinger 4.
I mean, it's incredible how many good albums came out of that band before American Idiot. You know, like
every one of them is good. Every one of them is good. Warning's good, Nimrod's good, all of it's good. Like, some better than others, but they're all good.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I got to grow up with them. I wanted to. We got two other pieces of you. Well, there's many other pieces of you to chew up and spit out. No. Do you still actually, a side note from our last time seeing each other last year, do you still feel the same way about The Bear, or have you warmed up to it?
The television show.
Yes. Not The Bear.
I only watched the first season. And but here are my critiques of The Bear. One, it stresses me the fuck out. I don't think I could ever
love that.
I don't think I could ever work in a kitchen. It's I never worked in a restaurant my entire life, and I don't think that show made me realize I like really wouldn't be able to deal with it. My issue with The Bear is probably something you can appreciate, because I gotta believe how many countless shows were made in New York when you lived there, and like how many countless shows get the New York experience wrong.
Yeah.
The Bear is a show that there are subtle details about it that they absolutely could have just gotten right. Like there were enough people working on that show where they could have just changed the dialogue to make it sound just a little more believable if you're from there. Like nobody gives a fuck who doesn't live in Chicago what neighborhood they're going to eat dinner or whatever. You know, it's like little details like that where it would have made no difference to the average person, but to people who live in Chicago, they would have been like, oh wow, they really got it right. Like that's really how it would have gone, you know, for somebody. They just didn't do that. And I also felt like it was a really, really good experience to prop up some local bands and businesses in a way that they didn't do with the soundtrack or with the plot lines. You know, like they could have actually genuinely made that show an excuse to like lift up some Chicago music as part of it, or lift up some Chicago restaurants as part of it.
Yeah.
And while at the same time making the show very believable and very authentic. And it felt like a missed out. And so, which is a drag, because everybody who was working on that show fucking lives here. So they could have asked any person, you know, what do we need to do to make this more authentic? You know, it's like, oh, well, you wouldn't go to fucking this place. You would go to this place and you would say this thing and you would eat it here. And this would be the song that was playing to like soundtrack the journey, you know, like, so that was disappointing. But, you know, I've got a little more skin in the game. I've lived in Chicago now almost 20 years. And it's like, you know, I'm passionate about this city. There's a lot of people. So one man's opinion.
I love this show for so many reasons. I do like it because it's super stressful, because it helps me feel less insane. But I love the soundtrack because it's like everything I love. It's Pearl Jam, it's Nine Inch Nails, it's Wilco, it's REM. Yeah. You know, I would shit myself 5 times over if season 4 opens up with New North Side Air,
or like a Rap Boys tune, or like a fucking. I mean, I'm glad they're playing Wilco on the show, but there's also just like fucking decades of great Chicago music that they could pull from. That would, I think, add to the only because the show positions itself as such a Chicago show.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, if you're going to go the extra mile and say that this is like this is fucking Chicago. It's like, then go all the way. Don't half-ass it and, like put Naked Ray Gun in a fucking clip, or like, toss some, what would be like another really great example? Like any number.
Albini's band.
Yeah, dude, Shellac. Like they could be using Shellac
yeah.
for like some of the really like tense moments. They could, and all of these bands would gratefully license their music to this show on the basis that it is so Chicago. So yeah, I mean, you have the whole Touch and Go roster, the whole Thrill Jockey roster, the whole Southern Records roster, the whole, even like you got a label like Numero here who has like dozens of things you can choose.
That's right.
And that would even also be cool. It's like, even if they were working with like a Chicago label to license something, like if there were some connection in any way, I think that would just be so special, and really be able to get the city to rally around the show, which is, I think, kind of part of it. You know, like you watch a show like The Sopranos, right? And like North Jersey is able to rally around The Sopranos. You can rally around that show because that is so true to that experience. It is so faithful to what it's like to be in Lower Manhattan and North Jersey. So faithful. And that makes the show even better, right? That makes the show timeless because it is that moment in time captured, so that's where I think the Bear misses. If I were a production assistant on that show, I'd have a word or two with these guys.
Well, I would love to talk to Christopher Storer. I think the thing about the music, it's a reflection of his personal taste, which, I like that. I think it's a beautifully constructed show that is very chaotic. But I was just curious to see if your opinion changed, but it hasn't, but that's okay. So let's talk about Storm Chasers, because in the midst of the pandemic, you started, you bring on this Patreon and you start a record label going kind of full force as a small business owner in a time where we're all like, the fuck is, we don't know what's going to happen. But how long was that in the making? I know Storm Chasers has been a part of you for a while, but this was a different iteration.
So it started in 2014. I wanted to put out the Kitty Hawk record, which was my ex-partner Kate's band at the time, and Rick from Pet Symmetry. It was like, a band of homies that I wanted to do their record. And at that time, I really wanted to do a label. I thought that was kind of like the next evolution. And what we were doing was to kind of build a brand around our circle of friends and kind of be able to present that as like a collective, and that wound up not really working out the way that I wanted to. It was very expensive, and I was so busy doing the touring thing, I wasn't really able to give it the attention that it deserved, and lost a decent amount of money on a couple projects, and was just like, I got to walk away from this. And so kind of put it to bed. So enter 2020, and we are, dealing with the pandemic, and everybody is looking for ways to promote their music without being able to go on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of that is we were getting ready to roll out Figure. And I'm thinking internally, like, all right, well, I can't tour. So how can I roll this record out and then also have additional ways to like continue to promote what Into It Over It's doing, and have there be more things that people can be talking about to like extend the lifespan of that record? Because I don't know if you remember, but like music hasn't changed since then, where bands will put out albums and then you got like a month of people talking about that record before it goes away.
That's it. Yeah.
Like records just disappear at this point. I don't remember what's the last record you bought that like has made a super lasting impression, that like lasted on your turntable for a while and you were like psyched on. And I'm sure you have an answer to that question, but it's way more few and far between than it used to be, right? Like,
and I think you can probably guess the name of that band, because might be wearing it on my shirt.
Right. So, okay, right. So like, yeah. So, and then you're like, you have a moment with that record, but eventually that moment fades, and it's like, there's nothing else to like behind it to keep it going. So we were planning out the rollout for that. And I was at the time, this woman, Jamie Coletta, was helping me with my PR. And I was kind of like, hey, well, Jamie, so what do you think I should be doing? I did have management, right? So I'm like, I haven't had management up until that point. I hadn't had management for 6 years, and kind of taking a break from touring, taking a break from doing music in general. And this was kind of like me reintroducing, myself and the band, and, coming at it with a better attitude, So like, she was like, I think you should start a mailing list. And I'm like, okay, well, and I thought about that for a second, and I was like, well, I like the idea of there being a way to communicate directly with people who are excited about what we're doing. I do think there isn't really there's not really a call to action there. There isn't really like a thing that you're like asking people to participate in something, but you're not giving them something in return for their time and for what they're doing. So in that moment, I'd already planned to do 2 7-inches for old Into It Over It stuff that had happened and never really came out. And that was the Canada Sessions 7-inch and then the Standards B-sides. I was like, had the ability to press these on 7-inch. So I'd already had those in the canon. They were already in my house. Like everything was already pressed and ready to go. And I was like, cool, we'll put out figure. And then like 2 months later, we'll put out a 7-inch. Then 2 months later, we'll do another one. And it'll just be this way to keep Into It Over It in the conversation, right? And thought more about what Jamie said. And at that point, like a couple people have been doing Patreon to like talk about their bands and like provide some behind the scenes. And I liked that concept, but I didn't like that people would be paying a barrier for entry and not having like a physical, tangible thing to come away from.
Yeah.
So we had those 2 7-inches finished. We had figure was pressed, but we did a record release show version that the record release show was going to happen because of COVID. So I had this limited version with like 200 records basically. And then we had Runway Looks, which was the Pet Sim record, which was coming out like a few months later. So there was a runway of like 4 or 5 records that we had.
Yeah.
And I was like already working on pressing Merit by the Progress. So there was like this little bit of vinyl that we had like ready to go. And it was like, you know what we'll do? We'll set it up like a record subscription. And these people can pay a flat fee and we'll mail them a record every month. And then we'll also providing them all this behind the scenes and additional content about what we're up to. And it won't just be me. It'll be me and Pet Sim and They're There. And, Couplet wasn't even a band yet, but it was like not just my bands, but the bands that all of my friends that are in my bands with also have, which is like another of like 8 or 9 bands. So
it branches out. Yeah.
I got in touch with like, these 12, 15 people and was like, hey, this is kind of like, I'm going to run this like a community driven project where like anybody can get involved as much as they want or as little as they want. But if you get involved, like you get paid. And so along with the vinyl side of it, which was like its own other portion of the business. So,
yeah.
So since then, that was August of 2020 that we've started. We've done at least 1 record a month every month since then.
Wow.
The vinyl pressing plant where we get stuff manufactured is in the same building as our recording studio. So everything we're doing is incredibly hands-on and supporting the local Chicago economy, but also like when a record is finished, I don't have to wait 3 months for it to get here by boat. I can drive 15 minutes up the road and pick it up, immediately bring it back and start shipping it.
Yeah.
I can pick up a record today for, if I were picking up a record today, I could pick it up today and put it on sale today and be able to ship it to people immediately. And
that's very impressive.
So that was the thing that I wanted to make sure we could do. We've been able to, in some way, kind of seize the means of production. We've been able to provide a really good service to people who are like the diehard fans of what we do, and be able to follow through on a really killer subscription plan that allows us to, frankly, press whatever we want. Like we've found recordings that were lost. We've released records for bands that would have never gotten a vinyl release before. We've been able to turn a lot of folks on to bands they never would have heard. We've been able to reissue a couple super cool things that never got the vinyl treatment. Like we did this record for this band, Very Secretary, which is like a Roy from Braid's band after he left Braid. And that was just a beautiful album that I loved when I was in high school, and no one had ever put it out. And so it's like, wow, holy shit, like we can put it out, So it's been a really, of all of the things I've probably ever done musically, Storm Chasers has probably been the most like painstaking yet gratifying.
Yeah.
And, we can kind of go into any project at least knowing we will break even.
Yeah.
Which has allowed us to really take some chances on some stuff. And, we process our royalties quarterly. Like, so everybody gets paid. We don't touch anybody's digital catalog, so we don't own anyone's album. Everyone can do whatever the fuck they want with their own album if they want to. And the bands can buy their records from us at cost. That money goes toward their recoup, which is not a thing that labels do. I don't know if you knew this,
right?
But like, if you were in a band and you had a label put out your record and you wanted to buy records from them, they wouldn't apply the money you're giving them toward the final recoup number. Did you know that?
No, that's fucking wild.
Fucking insane business practice that they would do that. So like, really being able to run it the way that we want to see a label treat the artists. And granted, it's not like, I'm not cutting like $1,000 royalty checks to people, but It's like, because it's not, we're not making that much money, but it's still like, if I were in a band and I had a label following up with me every 3 months, quarterly, right, to be like, hey, here's that, here's a couple $100.
Yeah.
Like, good job. Or like, at least giving them the report of like where it's at. Like, hey, if we sell another 5 records, we're in the black. You know what I mean? Like, or just do you want to buy records from us? Or in some cases being like, hey, I got to make room in my garage. Like, I'm just going to give you the rest of this. Like, we made the money back. Like, I'm not stressed about it. Like, here, take your last 20 and sell them at shows or whatever. I don't give a shit. But like, we're able to do it the way that we would want to do it, the way that we would want to be treated. And it allows us to kind of take control of everything we're doing now for ourselves. Like, I don't have to answer to anybody.
That's the biggest.
With Into It Over, for example, it's like we've tried. There have been moments where we've partnered with other labels on releases, like Pet Sims partnered with Asia Man, and we will continue to. And they're partnered with Polyvinyl on the new one, and I would gladly continue to. But there have been moments where we've discussed with other labels, like, what does it look like for a label to put out an Into It Over record and for us to work with them, and be a part of it, but like maybe not bankroll it the way that we've bankrolled. And there is no deal a label has been able to provide for us that's better than what we could do ourselves.
That's
and it's just like, at this point, it's like, fuck it. Like, how fucking awesome it feels to go into a label meeting and hear them tell you what they're going to do and be like, well, why would I give you 30%? Like, we are in charge. Like, I don't need you, actually. Like, what, and then, but also working with a label to try to find what could be the mutually beneficial situation that could be more like a partnership and less like a band getting taken advantage of.
Yes.
So, and it's a thing that I've, like, bands will come to us and be like, hey, I would love to, what's up with Storm Chasers? And it's like, I'll tell them, I'll fill them in. I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, dude, if you guys want the resources though to do this yourself, like, here's where we get it made. Here's how much it'll cost. Here's XYZ. Like, I go do it yourself. Like, here are the tools. The music industry specifically gatekeeps that information. I think, I don't want to sound like
definitely do
some fucking conspiracy theorist, but it's like, knowledge is power. And it's like, if the pipeline in order to be able to do XYZ yourself and understand actually how easy it is to do it, it's kind of like, holy shit. Like, if you're a band at a certain level, you don't need a label anymore. Like, you just don't. What are you going to do? You're going to give them anywhere from 30 to 50% of your album for them to promote your record for like a month and then go away.
Well,
move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? You got about 2 to 6 months of a label giving a shit about you before they're already on to the next thing they have to promote. But you're going to give them 30 to 50% for the rest of your fucking career on this record that they maybe fronted the money for.
Yeah.
So it's like, I read some of these contracts and I see what some of these bands are going through, and it's like, dudes, you guys, like, please, like, help me help you. Like, it's my opinion that as an elder, you said elder lifer, emo lifer, was that what you said at the beginning?
Yeah, I think that's what
it's the responsibility of us who are older and who have gone through the ringer and have seen the shit and had to crawl through it.
Yeah.
To be able to provide guidance and resources to the younger bands below us so they don't make the same mistakes that we made. And don't get me wrong, I think there's benefits to signing to a label. I have friends who are signing to folks like Hopeless and stuff, and their careers are blossoming because of it. And but that's not for everybody. And when those contracts are up, you'll have already the built-in work that you've done for that entire thing to be able to take control and be able to run it yourself and see a very nice twilight to your career, or like the back half of your career, right? Like, be able to really own it and appreciate it and see the direct benefits of it 100% instead of 30 to 50%. So yeah, anyway, it's going pretty well. And I think, as it continues, we fluctuate in subscription level, month over month. Right now it's kind of a challenging time to sell things. You get on macroeconomic level, we're in an election year. It's going to be a fucked up year, I think, for a lot of people. And, but it's enough for us to keep doing it. And, every year I kind of say like, man, this might be the last year, because it is a lot of work. I was like, this might be the last year. Every year I say that, and every year we fill the calendar, and it's like right now I'm about to fill the calendar today for next year. And so
Jesus,
it's like, oh my God, like, do I keep going? But new stuff keeps coming up, and it's like, well, of course I want to work on that. Of course I want to help you make that happen. And like, so we'll see. I don't know how much time we got left, but it will definitely be at least until August of 2025.
I mean, look, you're passionate about this. You always have been, but this is now you getting to be passionate while running the show, and it shows, and it's commendable. Like, I don't know how much it takes to get all this stuff done. I know what I do is more than enough for 2 or 5 or 6 people, but what you do is probably more than enough for 12 people.
Dude, it's a conversation I have with my therapist every week about how I just can't say no to things. And like, I need to take on more and more responsibilities and projects and just work in general. And, but I'm addicted to the grind, like I want to be able to say yes. I want to be able to follow through for people. And we'll see how it keeps going. But yeah, I'm excited for what's coming next year. I think it's gonna be a really busy and exciting year. And, really looking forward to seeing how it continues to grow.
I think there's enough that I want to ask you about the music industry and talk about, as well as the vinyl industry, that we could probably do another one just solely on that, especially because the vinyl, the way, and overall, I know I told you this like a year ago, I kind of got soured on vinyl during the pandemic. Like, you guys were putting out stuff that was quality because you were like overseeing it. But the bigger issue was, I think, what was that fucking merch company in Chicago that went under finally?
Oh, Second City. And they were in Batavia. That was like an hour west. But yeah, it's like, how do you fuck that up? It's like, you're literally like, what are you spending your fucking money on that you can't pay your artists their royalty checks?
Yeah.
And like, and it's like, I was really disappointed in that. They're not the only one. I mean, there's merch companies fucking failing left and right, but it's like, if you're not, who's doing the books? Anybody who's doing the books in those fucking companies shouldn't get hired anywhere else ever again. Make sure those people are never the accountant for another company ever. But yeah, I mean, I also do think there's a lot of pressing plants now. There's a lot of, which is great, right? Like, that's really,
there wasn't
that's a popular thing again. I think, and they're also coming up with more environmentally friendly ways of producing vinyl, which I think is going to be needed, because it's not necessarily a very environmentally good thing to be doing.
There's a lot of waste involved in it.
Right. And that's like, that's another thing with us. Like, we try to keep our pressing numbers incredibly low. It's like exactly what needs to be made is what gets made. But another part of that is, I just lost my goddamn train of thought.
Well, in my eyes, vinyl pressing quality has gone down.
That's what it is. So some of these plants aren't, the QC process is just not what it should be. Yeah. And like, and I think a lot of labels who are doing a lot more larger scale jobs aren't paying attention to the quality control of their albums. Like, I really appreciate the quality that Smash Plastic is our pressing partner. And I really appreciate the QC and the quality control that they have. I've rejected a test pressing twice from them.
Wow, that's not bad.
In the last 5 years, 2 times. And it was not because of their negligence. It was just like something happened to go wrong.
Yeah.
But the stuff from like A to Z in the Czech Republic, I've rejected tests like Figure went through 3 rounds and A to Z pressed that. And it took the 3rd round, wound up being right, because I had to go to a plate manufacturer myself and get the plates made and then shipped to Czech Republic so it would be pressed properly.
Jesus.
I had to pay an extra like fucking $600 out of pocket just to make sure that the
Ugh.
records sound right. And so, and they were trying to tell us that our mastering job was the problem. They were like, whoever mastered this did a terrible job. I'm like, dude, we hired Dave Kutch to master this record. He's the duty masters for like fucking Jay-Z. Like, there's no way that this guy fucked up the master. Like,
yeah.
So, and what's awesome about using a mastering house, like someone like a House of Mastering, where Dave Kutch works out of, is that they'll cut your lacquers for you. You can get the guy who mastered your record to cut your fucking lacquer so he knows it's right.
Wow.
And it's like, so yeah, Dave, can you cut? Sorry, man. Sorry, I have to ask you to do this 3 weeks after we approve the master. Can you cut the fucking lacquers again? Like, 100%, absolutely.
No, that sucks.
Mastercraft cuts them, sends them to GZ, no issue. It's like, come on, guys. Like, you're just hitting, you're putting shit into a machine, you're hitting go, and you're walking away. You're not even there to even check if this sounds good or not.
Yeah.
So, and they're one of the biggest breast implants in the world. Like, they've got all those brokers like Pirates Press and Precision. All those motherfuckers are using GZ.
Yeah.
So yeah, you gotta be mindful of that shit. And you can tell when you get it. You can tell the second you pull a record out of a sleeve if it was pressed well or not.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
The second you pull it out, you don't have to put it on the turntable to know it was good or bad if you're a record enjoyer. So,
oh man,
yeah, I could wax poetic about this dog shit for hours. You know,
yeah.
And we've already been on for an hour and 35. I think it's gonna have to be a second episode, but maybe do like a what grinds my gears segment where we just.
I love that. Oh man, you want to? Well, we're two East Coasters, and so we are very. We keep mental lists of the shit that grinds our gears, even going back 30 years. The one thing I wanted to point out, and it's the last thing I'll say about vinyl, is that the similarities of comics and vinyl are in one word: variants. So comics started doing variants in that. You'd get 15 different covers for the same issue with 15 different artists. And, we saw the rise in the variants of vinyl big time over the last 5 years. Now with Storm Chasers, usually do like 2-color variants.
Yeah, I'll do one because there's 2 different tiers, right? So you can either contribute 35 and you either get like a bonus or a merch item or an extra record every month. And we'll partner with other labels where we'll like get dead stock from them or like buy copies at cost from the label and include it in our mailer, which like most times like labels are very happy to get rid of stuff that is not moving but is like maybe associated with our friend group, or collaborate on a pressing for something that's brand new. Like we did it with Sincere Engineer a couple times. We've done it with, which Adam plays in also, and with Rat Boys a couple times, where it's like, hey, press an extra 200 and we'll cover the cost, and then we'll send it to our subs. Like they won't even hit retail. We'll give you the zip codes for your sound scan. It'll make you look like you sold an extra 200 copies without having to do anything. So we've done that a few times. But yeah, like with the 35s, they'll get the most limited color. If we do more than 400 records of anything, they'll get the most limited color. And otherwise we'll do like 300 to 350 and maybe hand number the first 200 or do something a little special for the lowest, like the limited ones. They're a little extra.
But what we've seen in the record industry, I mean, like you and I will never not love Pearl Jam, but Jesus Christ, Dark Matter got fucking 30 colorways. And it's like, you really want to devalue this thing, keep doing that. And it's the same thing that's happened with comics. And with that comes poor quality because they're using leftover colors. They're using this and that. They're not putting any care into it. And it's just like were you ever a comics kid? Like, did you read comics as a kid? Okay. Well, in the peak, the 90s comes the crash, 92, 93. They took so much advantage of not just comic stores, but kids, that everything just bottomed out and comics never recovered. And if the vinyl industry keeps doing what they're doing in that way, sucking out fucking 30 vinyl variants for every album, we got about a couple years left before you're going to be able to buy every record for $1 again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's some of the shit, like a lot of the major label shit is just overpressed and, and you see it. It's like you don't need to run to the store week 1 to buy something anymore. You can just wait until it goes on sale, like any fucking Urban Outfitters or Target or whatever the fuck. If you give a shit about music from that world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think the bespoke, smaller labels that are doing limited pressings and in really small numbers are always going to stay relatively the same. Like they they were around in the 90s when no one was buying records in the 90s. They were still doing the same thing, and it was still doing all right. And I think that'll always maintain. I don't see it being a technology that goes away, but I don't think we're going to have the same moment that it had in 2006, or 2009.
No.
Like that was a big moment for collectors and just like, but then, you get some fucking capitalist pigs get their hands on something and they got to fucking ruin it, and it's going to go back to just like punk rock and anything else. It's going to go back to the basement,
but the majors, the music industry, there's no reason for record labels anymore that size. They're antiquated. Small labels are the only thing that'll keep going, because if they're run successfully like you do, or like, obviously like Jack White's a big name, but he still runs a small record label.
Oh yeah. And, their band's doing better shit than ever right now. It's like the bands they're putting out, the records they're releasing are all awesome. They've got a really nice curation of artists and put quality and care into their work. And I think that's going to maintain, I wouldn't say what we're doing is necessarily successful, but it's not successful. We're break even. It's a break even operation. And, it's one that just allows us to make stuff that we wouldn't, it's for the love of the game. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it's not losing money, and
then that's a success. Like if you're, unfortunately we have to look at it in terms of reality, and that means you are being successful if you're not losing money.
Not losing money.
It's
on my statements to the IRS, it looks like I'm right at fucking zero.
Yeah. That's okay. What they don't know, they don't know. But I'm super proud of you for that, and it's awesome to see it still going. And I think we'll get going, but I just want a brief like Reverb. You've been at Reverb now for 8 years.
8 years, dude. Yeah. So I do business development for them. I work with brands in the music gear space, and just moving through either new releases or exclusive releases, or helping them market their products, or helping just support them, help grow their business while also growing ours. And, and it's been very gratifying work. It's a cool gig. And now I get to work from home, which is even nicer. I get to do stuff like this during the day, which is a treat.
Which is awesome. And you can
don't tell my boss I did this podcast, I guess is what
I won't. Mr. Reverb, you are not hearing this. But you also get to like curate, like you were doing curation of, what was it, like Billy Corrigan or Jeff Tweedy?
Oh, back in the day when I started doing that work, I was doing a lot of the artist shop stuff, which was super cool. And I haven't done that in many years. It's been probably since before the pandemic, since I was doing that stuff. My work has shifted into more brand focused work since then, but doing some of those artist shops was super, super cool. Like the Green Day one was so special, and got to do one for Dinosaur Jr., got to do one for Ben Folds. There's a bunch of other ones mixed in. Yeah, I did the Moby one it was like thousands of drum machines. It was, what felt like thousands of drum machines. It's just super, super exciting stuff. Just getting to like dork out about gear all day. It's like, as a gear person before I worked at Reverb and still a gear person now, it's been a very excellent job to have, that has also provided fringe benefits to my music career and helped me be able to, kind of get a first look at what's new and what's exciting, what's coming out, what's it's helped me meet a lot of great musicians. It's helped me meet a lot of folks in Chicago who I never would have gotten a chance to meet probably, and open up my worldview about how music is made and how it could be made. And so, just really a really good gig.
That's awesome. Well, just proves that you are one of the hardest working humans that I've ever known, having, doing these two separate things while every once in a while, like, oh, we're going out on the road.
Yeah. 4 or 5 bands with a full-time job and a label and amongst every other responsibility, except for having kids, it's like one of these are all my kids, I guess.
Yeah. And if there's ever an opportunity that somebody can buy a used Mike McCready guitar for under $10,000, please let me know.
You could buy his fucking his Fender now directly from Fender. They did a small run of the Mike McCready Strat. You can get one for like $1,800.
But I want one that he used.
Oh yeah, good luck, dude. So me and every other fucking Pearl Jam fan.
And lastly, I'll just ask you, because I have to. Why is New Jersey so inferior to New York?
Oh, I don't have an answer for you there because that shit not true. You're just talking about New York City.
Yeah.
I would say that 2 of the 5 boroughs are arguably better than New Jersey, but I'm a South Jersey guy.
Yeah, so
Not a North Jersey one. Like
you're a Philly
where
guy.
I live, there's farms and greenland and open space and just like not shopping malls and not gasoline refineries and not an airport.
Toxic waste dumps.
That is not the Jersey that I know and love. So like, I mean, if you ask any New Jerseyan, they'll tell you that the state should be divided into 2 or 3 states and not just one. So
north, south, and coast.
Yeah, or it'll be north, south, and central.
Central. All right, fair enough.
But which I would be decidedly south. But I love Jersey. It's like whenever I'm home, it's like I get replenished with the energy. You know, like I just.
I think
like
my
soul.
The one thing we can agree on is Wawa beats sheets.
All fucking
hands down. Hands down.
Yeah. Dude, if I liked eating dog food, I would like sheets. Wawa at least is like fresh fucking food.
I'll never forget the first time I made a sandwich on a computer screen, and it was so good. So good. Yeah. The breakfast sandwich.
It's as good as any other hoagie you're going to find in Jersey.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. Oh.
Anyway, I have got to go back to my normal life right now.
All right. So for anybody listening or watching, I'll have the links to the Patreon down below, some more of Evan's socials down there, Intuit over it, Pet Symmetry, Couplet, there, and the Patreon, Storm Chasers. Evan, you know I fucking love you and I appreciate you, man.
Love you too. I had a great time. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for listening to that. I had a really great time talking to Evan and catching up, and I'm glad that he was able to take a break out from his day to enjoy that too. Like I said earlier, all of the links down below, you can find where to sign up for his Patreon. You can check out Intuit Over It on Spotify, Pet Symmetry, there, and his other bands. Do a little Googling, but also give him a follow on Instagram. And before we get going, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you to please subscribe to this podcast if you're not. It's on all the major platforms. The one you're listening to on now, you can just hit the subscribe button. If you are listening to it on Spotify, scroll up to the top of Direct Edition. Give me a star rating. If you're on Apple, rate the podcast, write a little review. I will definitely give you a shout out on the podcast. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, feel free to ask some questions in the comments, hit the like button. Engagement from you helps me grow this podcast, and I'm always happy to give you a shout out on this podcast. That'll be it for this episode of Direct Edition. Bye-bye.